What did you guys think of the price when they announced it?
It took a little while to absorb it. We were talking earlier that Elon first announced it at $39.9 for the lowest one. With inflation, that would be $47.7, but it wasn't $47.7. I can see that if you take off the $7,500 tax credit, you do get close to that.
Yes.
So that's fair.
Right.
But then we don't think that's going to come out for a while, right? We're talking the high-end truck at 100, but I get it. If people want it bad enough, they're going to pay 100. I think it is the middle version, which most people have been talking about as the dream version for them. Yeah. And so that's the big question, is bring it in under $80,000. Is that magical enough to get that $7,500 tax credit? And so we're talking, what, $72,500?
Something like that, yeah.
Is that a good number?
What's really interesting is how they're doing the extended range version. The big thing that they've been talking about is, hey, we're heading into 2026, 2027. As EV demand grows, there's going to be a potential shortage of batteries. And the last thing they want to do is put batteries in vehicles that are not going to be used. The extended range strategy, I think it's a very clear sign that says, hey, there's probably going to be a little bit of a problem from a shortage perspective, but then it also highlights that the targets they had for 4680 were not met. But I think it's twofold. There's two things going on there. What's going to be interesting to see with that extended range version, I think, is the uptake. You're going to have the dual motor, 340 plus miles. The range extended gets you to 470. It's 16 grand, right? If you're able to get dual motor at 80 with a $7,500 tax credit, that's 72.5. With 16, that's 88, right?
Look at this math whiz over here.
Yeah,
Dang.
it's just numbers, bro. Come on, keep up. But I think the uptake of that is going to be a signal that says, are people seriously considering an electric truck as a hauler, as something that's actually going to pull stuff? That's been the biggest knock against electric vehicles, is like, hey, if I want to go 500 miles and use it that one time to tow 11,000 pounds, I'm not going to be able to do it. That theoretically gives you the option to do it, and I'm curious to see how many people are actually willing to take that option.
I don't even know if you need to do it, though. Everyone does use 500 miles as the magic number, because if you divide it in half, that's 250, blah, blah, blah. But do you really need that much if you have a supercharger network? I don't know the answer, to be honest.
I think it's really a question of, what are you hauling? How long are you hauling it? I can imagine a professional car hauler could say, the total cost of ownership of this truck is going to save me a whole bunch of money, plus I really want this truck. Getting the extended range not only gets me a faster truck, which is cool as hell, it's also going to mean less supercharger stops. So I can see how, for that sort of aspect where you're going to be towing long range all the time, totally makes sense to have an extended range. If they didn't have an extended range, you can't get the truck. Now you can. It's 16 grand more, but you're probably using it professionally.
It's two separate things. It's like the ability to do it is one thing, and then the affordability of it is like a separate thing. And right now we're not there, right? It's obvious that we're not there. You can't have an affordable EV with a lot of range, and like 500 plus.
We don't have any Tesla trucks on the road. We don't have any electric trucks that can use the supercharger network at the moment. I feel like somebody who gets that dual motor and starts towing with it is going to find that there are enough superchargers. It might be a pain because you're going to have to stop more frequently, but it's doable. So when the family wants to go to Yosemite or whatever, they're going to be able to make it. Yeah. It's just a question of how much longer is that trip going to take, and is it worth $16,000 to get the extended range to make that trip a little bit faster?
Yeah. The other thing to think about is this truck a traditional buyer's truck, or is it going to create its own market, right? One of my really good friends in Texas, his name's Travis, and he has an F-250, and ever since I showed him the Cybertruck, he's like, this thing's a piece of shit. It's like, he's just going on it. Like, my F-250 will kick its ass. I can't wait to show him the videos for today, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to create stereotypes, but I think that there's a certain truck buyer out there that says, my truck, I can spend 60, 65, 70 on an F-250 or a low-end 350 or whatever, and I can do that once in a while, 500-mile trip towing. That gives them a sense of security. Being American is that. It's like, I want to do that one thing at that one time when I'm alive, right?
Yep.
And so, like, is that what it's going for? Is that going to be its key market, or is it going to create its own market?
I think that being able to say it could do it really answers that question, I think, for a lot of people, and it'll shut them up, that stereotype where it's like, yeah, but what if I want to tow blah, 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 and it's like, well, you can get the extended range one, and sure, there's a comeback to that, but I don't think that it really matters.
I think there's also going to create a new dynamic, because I think many of us, it's so expensive to think about doing something like that, where the gas and so forth. I feel like with electric, they're going to see how cheap it is. I feel like maybe not towing a big camper, but these new campers like space campers, I feel like are going to be so efficient that a lot of people are going to discover that way of camping, and maybe that'll create like a new paradigm shift in all this.
And it's like, okay, we're going to talk about towing all day. It's, again, something you're going to do probably less than 1% of the time. The rest of the time, you're going to be driving around a truck. And the gas mileage isn't that much better towing. If you have a gas truck, it's going to be that much more expensive to fuel. So do you really want to own that F-250 or whatever just in case? Or would you rather have the Cybertruck every day and it still can tow, damn it?
Yeah. By the time Tesla's able to make enough trucks to potentially start eating away that market, like 2026, 2027, then we have to take into account savings from economies of scale. You have to take into account savings from the 4680 going to the next few generations, right? Maybe new manufacturing practices. We have some sort of deflationary thing happening because of automation and artificial intelligence. So I think that's where the story gets really interesting. Today's pricing came higher than I expected. I thought 70,000 for a dual motor, 3 to 350 miles, and then beast mode was 89. That was like my final prediction. It was 10 above, right? Plus the extended range that took it a little bit further on the top.
So you
end.
were really off.
I was very off. On the
was
top
too.
end, I was
But you
very
were hoping
off.
like I was. I think
was
like,
too,
you
I was
know.
optimistic. I was also falsely using the initial specs that we got from 2019. I did that inflation factor on top. It's also going to be more because there's going to be more demand. Of course, it turned out to be even more than that. 2 to 3 years from now, I'm not going to say that 79,000 won't be the price forever for a dual motor, but I wouldn't be surprised
Right.
if the rest of the lineup, they either add more range or they lower the price over time.
I think Tesla has a demand problem. They have too much demand. They have 2 million people signed up for this vehicle. Maybe that number is lower, blah, 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 but that's a big problem because they're not going to be able to deliver 2 million trucks in a reasonable amount of time. You have high demand, you're going to do what the market demands you do and raise the price.
I do think that 2 million is going to be less after this pricing came out
Of course,
today.
but
It will
that's what they need.
It'll be, I 100% agree.
It can't stay 2 million. They're in
Correct.
trouble.
They're actually gonna have a place to sell,
It's
yeah.
a demand problem.
Very true. 100%.
When can we
Doofus
start
Gordon
talking
Johnson.
about the robots making the trucks? I feel like when we talk about it now, nobody believes us, but it is going to happen very soon. For us, for me, a robot seems impossible. It seems like, I mean, I don't even know where you begin, but I think for Elon, it's a bunch of motors and some actuators and some software that he's already figured out, and he knows that it's going to cost him, I don't know, $30,000 or something. When he can turn that part on, isn't this whole game change?
Absolutely. There's no reason why it wouldn't change. The promising thing there, Andrej Karpathy put out a video a couple of days ago where he was explaining a large language model for dummies, right? And then he was also using the work they were doing with FSD and the Tesla bot and figuring out how to bring those two things together. It's becoming really obvious that what Tesla has created with FSD, the foundation, that all they have to do is just feed data from the bot for it to work. They don't have to build anything else from scratch. It's already there. The foundation's there. So now it just becomes a matter of having the bot learn how to do the motions and then figuring out a manufacturing process so that your bot is less than outfitting an entire factory full of robots. From a mathematical perspective, you sit down and do the math. From a raw materials perspective, you're like, of course this is going to work. But the bot has to do the motions. They have to do the movement. If you want to be optimistic about it,
I do.
me too. Who doesn't? Probably like 2026, a bot will start influencing the cost of goods sold on the Cybertruck, if I were to guess, in some way. It might be like small, but if it's as simple as move part from A to B, that is so much of manufacturing. I don't think a lot of people understand. Move part from point A to point B is like 98% of it, right?
Yes.
And if the bot can be involved in that, you all of a sudden you get huge drops in COGS, cost of goods sold. But it might take a while to get enough bots in there to be a part of the process.
That starts solving a whole lot of other problems. Tesla is ramping up and they're going to have labor problems, labor shortage problems. And you don't have to deal with the whole UAW problem if you're, I don't think they can unionize yet, right, bots?
Last time I heard, that's not the case. And if they can, boy, are we...
Yeah. When your smart TV has to go on a union break.
I don't feel like watching Netflix right now.
Yeah. I'm on my break.
There's one other thing, too, with the Cybertruck is that the thing we have to remember is that the manufacturing process for the Cybertruck is supposedly, from what we've seen so far from Tesla, what I saw at the factory, significantly less parts than a traditional truck, but significantly less parts than, say, a Model S. Or even a
Really?
Model 3. If you think about it, everything's casted. It's just a bunch of castings. It's 48-volt architecture, which reduces how much wiring you're going to put in there, and they're going to streamline the harnesses. The new technology is going to come from the manufacturing processes and the type of equipment that they put in the truck. It's a huge simplification of the process. That is also going to help with manufacturing.
Let's talk about the 48 volts, because I think for a lot of us who don't know much about cars, volts, 48 volts, who cares? But this is the first production vehicle that we know of that's done 48 volts. Can you give us an idea of why that's such such a big deal?
So this is where I'm actually very excited to talk to Sandy about once we bring him on stage. It's really the biggest savings come from huge cost savings and also huge weight savings. With the 48-volt system, you basically reduce the weight by about 70%. And then with the 48-volt architecture, you're going to have a lot more reliability because you're not depending on this old school 12-volt architecture that's just not going to be nearly as reliable as a 48. It's a cost, and then when you have the weight savings, it's also a downstream cost savings because that means you need less batteries. Even though it's a little bit of weight, you're still getting a little bit of savings from that side as well. That's where Sandy's going to be able to give us a lot of insight as to why that's such a big deal.
What do you think the other automakers are doing today?
What's interesting about the other automakers is that they've been very upfront about how they're not taking this transition seriously. They've already come out and said, we're going to delay our plans to make an EV. GM, Ford, VW is delaying their plans for their battery factories. So there's already a signal out there that says, what we're making already, people don't want. So why would we even try to compete with that thing? If I'm an executive that's making that decision already, I don't think there's any planet where that same executive is going to say, yeah, but we're going to make something to go against that thing. What they're going to do is they're going to try to use their existing lineup and try to justify it as a superior product to the Cybertruck. I'll say, buy our Toyota Tundra hybrid that is just a truck that has been around forever, but it has a 7 kilowatt hour battery, and I will get the $7,500 credit. I think that's the direction Legacy Auto are going. They're going to try to use marketing and advertising to try and convince people that their inferior product is actually superior.
Do you think that they're actually going to regress? I feel like we made some progress. We got some electric vehicles from these companies. We begged and screamed and threatened them, and they finally started to do it. And now they're like regressing, right? Do you think that the arguments that they're going to start pulling out of their hats are going to be the old arguments that we've already debunked? And we're going to have to debunk them again because they've fallen down in the algorithm? They're going to say like, oh, electric cars actually aren't that good.
I don't know if they're going to regress. The way I would define it is that they're going to try to lean really heavy into hybrid technology, and they're going to say, you don't really want EVs, you want hybrids. Right. Because that does two things for them. One is that it allows them to utilize their existing manufacturing processes that they have built for gas cars, because hybrids are just gas cars. I'm not trying to say hybrids are terrible cars. I'm just saying.
I am.
You can take the heat right here. That's your guy. So that's one thing, right? You're going to be able to leverage your existing manufacturing process to keep your costs down. And then once you put a big enough battery that gets a tax credit in the United States, then you get the other side of it where you have this lever you can pull that's going to allow you to keep your costs competitive versus a competing EV. But what's going to happen over time is that you're going to end up having this shift where you're going to go from gas cars back in 2015, 2020 being cheaper than EVs, and then you're going to go fast forward 5 years, you're going to have hybrids that are going to be more expensive than EVs because people are just shifting away from pure gas cars. It seems quite obvious that's what's happening. Legacy automakers, if you look at their financials with the amount of debt that they have and just how just unwilling or incapable they are to shift to the new technology, they're going to have no other choice to appease their investor base that is very happy about dividends, and God forbid they do something where the dividends go away, or stock buybacks that GM just did. They can't do anything to upset that balance. That's where hybrids are going to be very helpful for them, but I think the consumer at some point is going to be like, do I pay a premium on a hybrid, or do I just buy a freaking EV? And I think that's where we're going to go.